Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Let me go and get this shut up now. You know, I have to get it together as I go. Let me get me a tape too, just in case. You never know. All you want. That was the quote that I was using. I had to look up me a little quote before I got here. But hey, let me let Wilson Finance get started, y'all. He already, on 46 minutes. Lord, let him get started. Disclaimer. The views, he got a disclaimer. The views and opinions expressed in this video are my own and based on publicly available information and sources cited. All allegations discussed are unproven and presented for informational and commentary purposes only. This content is protected opinion speech and is not intended as statements of fact or assertions of illegal content or conduct. Viewers are encouraged to conduct their own research. We got a bipartisan policy center. Hold on. Let me see. Let me just let them finish. Speed them up.
Last week, I received a cease and desist letter from Turning Point. This is the first step in a lawsuit. If I post this video, Turning Point will likely sue me and try to destroy my life. I have a choice to make. I can speak the truth, but it will cost me everything I have.
Amen.
The corrupt Turning Point executives have forgotten something. In 1941, Pearl Harbor was attacked by Japan. Hundreds of Japanese planes destroyed much of the U.S. fleet and the planes on the ground. The attack was such a surprise, most U.S. planes on the island were not able to take off. But a handful of brave U.S. pilots, without orders, jumped in their planes, managed to take off, and engage with the enemy. One of them, Philip Rasmussen, was still in his pajamas. This is how he describes the attack in his own words. I was in my pajamas, and I yelled down the hallway that we were being attacked by the Japanese. And I ran to my room, and I strapped a webbed belt around my waist and a .45 caliber pistol in my holster that was on this belt, and put on a pair of shoes and ran for the flight line. A handful of U.S. pilots faced off against hundreds of Japanese planes. That is courage under fire. And they kept Pearl Harbor from being even worse. 2,403 Americans died in the attack on Pearl Harbor. Being brave is part of what it means to be an American. That is something that Charlie Kirk understood.
Oh my God. Not using a CEO against them. I had to find a quote. Just give me a second. No, that's coming. We might as well wait. Somebody has to get logged in first. And so, since it was you, then it just ended up being you. It just is what it is. I mean, it really don't, it don't be taking that long. I just be having to go find a quote. Especially if I don't have one already ready when I get here. I believe we should be on 16. Everybody should be on the same number. Okay. And so this is Positivity Vlog. And then we have 16. Make sure. And then I'm going to give you a little story time about what happened. You know I have a story time. You know I have a story time. I need an emoji that I have not used in a long time. Let me receive. You know I have a story time. It wouldn't be me without a story time. About what happened with me, what I discovered. And then you just let me know if it's something not that big of a deal. Am I over exaggerating? Let me know. Cause when I found out about it, I was so blowed. I couldn't even I couldn't hide it. I couldn't fake it. I was just like, I'm blowed. I am totally and completely blowed. And I had to accept that. I had to accept it. I was like, you know what? You're blowed. It's okay. I would maybe suggest you go and take a nap. Because we're not us when we're blowed. And so I just went and laid down and took me a nap. Technically I went to sleep. But this was 2 days ago. So that would have been Saturday night coming into Sunday night, correct? I was so blowed I didn't even log in yesterday. I was like, I'm too blowed for this foolishness. Just gonna go to sleep. That was my attitude yesterday. I'm gonna just tell you how it is. You know me. Shall we start over for the individuals who just got here? Because you're late. Let them.
Last week, I received a cease and desist letter from Turning Point. This is the first step in a lawsuit. If I post this video, Turning Point will likely sue me and try to destroy my life. I have a choice to make. I can speak the truth, but it will cost me everything I have.
My Lord.
The corrupt Turning Point executives have forgotten something. In 1941, Pearl Harbor was attacked by Japan. Hundreds of Japanese planes destroyed much of the U.S. fleet and the planes on the ground. The attack was such a surprise, most U.S. planes on the island were not able to take off. But a handful of brave U.S. pilots, without orders, jumped in their planes, managed to take off, and engage with the enemy. One of them, Philip Rasmussen, was still in his pajamas. This is how he describes the attack in his own words. I was in my pajamas, and I yelled down the hallway that we were being attacked by the Japanese. And I ran to my room, and I strapped a webbed belt around my waist and a .45 caliber pistol in my holster that was on this belt, and put on a pair of shoes and ran for the flight line. A handful of U.S. pilots faced off against hundreds of Japanese planes. That is courage under fire. And they kept Pearl Harbor from being even worse. 2,403 Americans died in the attack on Pearl Harbor. Being brave is part of what it means to be an American. That is something that Charlie Kirk understood, and it's something that I try to live up to. I owe it to those brave Americans who gave their lives. So I have one message for all you patriots out there. It's time to fly. I believe what is going on at Turning Point is so much worse than anything I've talked about so far. It is so bad that it would implicate the entire leadership at Turning Point, and it has to do with ballot harvesting. I want to start by addressing some criticism. Since I started posting videos about financial irregularities at Turning Point, I have been viciously attacked. One of these people is a lawyer named Robert Barnes.
Says, any comment on the financial fraud that Wolves and Finance has pointed out? I know your answer to this, Robert.
Wolves and Finance is a big fat fraud. He's a joke. He's a disgrace.
First of all, he ain't fair. I mean, I know you're probably figuratively speaking, but word choice. How is he a fraud? I don't understand. How is he a fraud? Let him finish.
Liar? Liar?
You know when people have to do all that. You know when people have to do all that.
About the records of
Look at his face. Look at it, bro.
He falsely stated that the TPUSAs didn't have an address at a place, basically.
He said it was at the UPS store. That seemed to have checked out.
At a location, he was lying about it. It was right there. It's like, oh, I came to the mall and there's nothing here. It must be totally fake business. Everybody uses mail drops for the most part. And if you're TPUSA, you have very good security reasons for doing so. And he just lied about it. Wolves in Finance, fraud, fake, phony. That's all he is. That's all he's ever going to be. He lied about how tax law works. He lied about how charitable law works. He lied about what TPU. He was like, look at this TP Action 2024 has made a bunch of money. Maybe they made it in secret from Charlie Kirk. It was their get out the vote operation for 2024, you nitwit. I mean, he just lied about every basic thing. Wolves in Finance, big fat fraud. He wants to get into the clickbait whore world with Candace Owens, who's the queen of the brothel there. And that's all he did well, and that's the only thing he did right.
Let me tell you what I think of Robert Barnes.
Yeah, let's go.
I actually really like the guy. I've been a fan of his for a long time. He's a lawyer, he's an expert on constitutional law, and you have to respect that.
Okay.
That clip was from the Viva Frei podcast, which is a podcast that Robert Barnes is on a lot.
Okay.
I also really like Viva Frei. Viva Frei is one of the few podcasters that is brave enough to accurately cover the pipe bomber story, which is something I care a lot about. Robert Barnes also has a long resume in his legal work, including working on the Alex Jones defamation lawsuits, the Kyle Rittenhouse case, and the Amish farmers who refused USDA inspection. So he's obviously a really good lawyer. But more than that, he's just a really likable person. Do you know anyone like this? He's one of these guys, you cannot help but like him. I know that he's going around saying all these mean and horrible things about me. But I still like the guy. I can't help it. He's just a likable person. Now, obviously, he's wrong about me. Anyone who has seen my videos knows he's clearly misrepresenting what I'm saying. But I'm not going to hold that against him. Everyone is allowed to have a bad take once in a while. I'm not going to let it bother me. He's allowed to have his own opinion. What he's not allowed to do is argue with the facts.
Especially not coming from a constitutional lawyer. Excuse me, man. Don't do that. Let me speed him up, man, okay? We need them. We need 1.5 at least. Oh, my goodness.
Robert Barnes went on a podcast called Paramount Tactical, and they discussed a letter that was allegedly sent from the IRS to Turning Point.
All right, so that is just kind of the tip of the iceberg as far as the allegations. I know that Wolves and Finances have kind of brought to the fore against TPUSA. And Robert, I know I actually got some of the documents, the letter from the IRS to Erica Kirk and TPUSA that talks about what their situation is as regards to the IRS.
This letter has been floating around and reported on by mainstream news outlets like CBS. Except the letter itself has never been shown until Paramount Tactical's podcast. In fact, I'm guessing he was not supposed to show this to his audience because it is quite shocking. It is a 2-page letter on Department of the Treasury.
Oh, I'm not saying. This is like his second time doing this. Then Andrew tell him, don't show this text message thread. Okay, so we got EIN numbers. Oh, Lord. Requested certain return information of the 4 tax-exempt entities listed above, for which you are chairman, CEO, or president. In particular, you requested the following information. Number 1, whether any returns filed by these entities are being examined or subject to any other current investigation by the IRS, and if so, a description of the nature of any such activity. And number 2, confirmation that the, let me start smelling. You really can't, there's nothing really you can do about it. Confirmation that the above named entities submitted on time and to the IRS by May 15, 2025, their respective IRS forms 990 for the tax year beginning July 1st, 2023, a muffin, and ending June 30th, 2024. Okay. July 1st, 2023, and ending June 30th, 2024. Okay. Confirmation that the above-named organizations are not required to submit until May 15, 2026, their respective IRS forms 990 for the tax year beginning July 1st, 2024, and okay.
Letterhead. It says it is responding to a request from Erica Kirk. It says, 1, there is no IRS investigation currently underway on Turning Point. 2, all 4 990 forms were filed by May 15th, 2025. 3, the next year's forms will be filed by May 15th, 2026. The letter is signed by Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent. Paramount Tactical is presenting this letter as some kind of evidence that there is no fraud at Turning Point.
Treasury Secretary?
That is ridiculous for a number of reasons. We all know this because all of us deal with the IRS. We all know this is not normal behavior. Have any of you ever received a letter from the IRS saying, just letting you know, we're not doing an investigation on you? No, of course you have not, because the IRS does not do this. And it's not coming from the IRS. The letter is signed by the...
When I tell you, my motherfucking hair on my blue, I'm like, IRS? He ain't even at the IRS, he at the Treasury.
Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent. To me, this looks more like a political favor to Donald Trump's personal friends than a legitimate IRS communication. Second, the wording in this letter does not mean anything.
Exactly. Department of the Treasury, Internal Revenue Service, they just do something together.
Just because the IRS is not investigating does not mean there is no fraud going on. This does not mean that donors cannot sue Turning Point to get their money back. This does not mean that state attorney generals cannot file criminal charges against Turning Point executives. This letter does not disprove my concerns about their finances. And what is this?
Right.
What is this? At the top of the page, someone has crossed out Mrs. Kirk and wrote in Erica. It looks like someone is proofreading Scott Bessent's letter.
Dear Miss Kirk, who else would it be? Why would you have to cross out Mrs. Kirk and write Erica?
Who could that be? I have reviewed so many White House documents, and in my opinion, that handwriting looks like it was written by Donald Trump.
Oh my God.
If you compare it to other samples of his writing, he does a consistent method where he writes a name dash, name dash, name dash. The K is very much like this K. The E is written the same way as this W. This handwriting looks like it belongs to Donald Trump.
Oh my God.
This letter does not look like it came from the IRS. It looks like it came from the President of the United States. Do you understand what this means? This is the only document the Democrats need to impeach President Trump.
Oh. Ooh. It's getting spicy up in here now. Ooh, it just got spicy in here. Wow.
This looks like the president's handwriting on official letterhead of him interfering in an IRS investigation of his personal friends. Let me remind you of Richard Nixon. Nixon faced impeachment charges for interfering with the FBI investigation into the Watergate scandal. The main evidence was secret tape recordings of conversations in the Oval Office. Donald Trump is doing the same thing with the IRS investigation, but this time we have what looks like his handwriting on official letterhead. It looks like the White House is now part of the cover-up at Turning Point. Let me give some free accounting advice to Donald Trump. You get this one for free, Donald. Stop writing letters like this. Why isn't he distancing himself from this scandal? I highly doubt that Donald Trump was aware of what Tyler Boyer was doing behind the scenes. But now with this letter, Donald Trump looks like he's getting involved. And I'm saying this as someone who likes Donald Trump. And this letter deeply bothers me. People have a right to be upset about this. Turning Point has been raising millions of dollars from donations. Most people don't know what has been happening with the donations. I received a message from someone named Margaret. Like many other people, she donated money to Turning Point USA because she was moved by Charlie Kirk's death. She was told if she gave a donation that she would receive a hat as part of their fundraising effort. Here's the message. Thank you for your contribution to Turning Point USA with the official Turning Point email address. And it says, shipping of your hat could take up to 10 to 12 weeks. She donated on September 16th. 12 weeks would have been the second week in December. Margaret has never received a hat. Instead, she received this card with a rubber bracelet. They are sending bracelets to people instead of the hat they promised. And this is not an isolated incident. Here is a Facebook post. Made a $25 donation to TPUSA back in September that was supposed to come with a 47 hat free for making the donation. Never got hat. Tried texting them and calling them several times and have not gotten response. Did get one response from someone named Anika, who said she had no record of the transaction. Have sent them copies of my receipt with no response. Called and left my name and contact info on their voicemail because they never answer the phone and they don't even call you back. Loved Charlie Kirk and watched him religiously, but this has totally disappointed me. We'll call my bank and see if I can get reimbursed for the donation. And the replies are full of comments saying the same thing. All I got was a bracelet. We got a bracelet. No hat as promised. Got a cheap rubber band bracelet and no hat. That's a big way to turn people away. Just make false promises. Same thing happened to my husband. No hat. Gave a donation back in September. And it goes on and on and on. People need to realize what Turning Point has been doing to get donations since Charlie Kirk's death. They are lying to people to get their money and then sending them rubber bracelets. Let's look at the big picture. When someone gives money to Turning Point USA, what do they think they're giving money to? Most people think they're giving money to campus events, like what Charlie Kirk did. He would go to college campuses and answer questions. This is such a good nonprofit idea. Everyone supports that idea. Everyone knows that there is a major problem in the United States with college campuses. We have professors teaching communism and woke ideas in the classroom. How do we fix this? One way is what Charlie Kirk was doing. He was creating spaces on college campuses where students could talk about capitalism and free markets. He was allowing free speech where people could make fun of being woke. Everyone likes this idea. Everyone wants more of this. If this was all Turning Point was doing, no one would have a problem with it. What people are now realizing from Turning Point's financial information is that they are involved in a whole lot more. Let us look again at the 4 nonprofit companies. We have Turning Point USA, Turning Point Action, Turning Point Endowment, and America's Turning Point. 3 of these companies are 501c3 organizations. Turning Point Action is a 501c4. The difference is that a 501c3 is not allowed to participate in political activity. A 501c4 can participate in no more than 50% political activity. And then there is also Turning Point PAC, which is 100% political activity. Now, I've seen arguments from people claiming that this is normal. They say it is normal for nonprofits to have multiple different companies. Not like this, it's not. Do not let people gaslight you about what's going on here. Let me explain what is unusual. You would normally create different shell companies for different types of activities. For instance, Turning Point Endowment is for their investments. That's clearly a different type of activity. It gets its own company. That makes sense. Turning Point Action is a 501c4. That's a different type of activity, so it gets its own company. What is this? Why is America's Turning Point separate? The company descriptions on the 990 form are very similar. It's basically education for young people. So why are these 2 different companies? The only major difference that I see is that Charlie Kirk managed Turning Point USA and Tyler Boyer managed America's Turning Point. So in a way, America's Turning Point existed to give Charlie Kirk plausible deniability. It gave Tyler Boyer his own 501c3 where he could do whatever he wanted, and Charlie Kirk would not necessarily know about it. This is explained in the fine print of the 990 form for Turning Point USA, which says, Turning Point USA's other educational programs include campus leadership programs, which are hosted by Turning Point USA's related entity, America's Turning Point, with grants totaling $8.6 million. So what is Tyler Boyer doing with these students? It sounds like this leadership program is a pipeline for these students to go work for Tyler Boyer. I wonder what these students are doing that costs $8.6 million. We're going to get into that in a minute. The other obvious question for most people is, how does Turning Point get involved in so much political activity? The only companies that are allowed to do political activity are up to 50% of Turning Point Action and Turning Point PAC. What happens in the real world is that a lot of 501c3s will perform what they call get out the vote efforts, or voter education. This is defined in Treasury Regulation 1.527-6b5. Get out the vote campaigns must not be specifically identified by the organization with any candidate or political party. As long as these are nonpartisan activities, they are considered not political, and that is the loophole that is allowed for a 501c3. This would include things like signing people up for new voter registration. But you cannot be pushing for Republican or Democrat. It has to be completely nonpartisan. Here's the problem. Turning Point USA is a 501c3. They are supposed to be non-political. But then we see Erica Kirk endorsing J.D. Vance for president.
We're going to ensure that President Trump has Congress for all 4 years. We are going to get my husband's friend, J.D. Vance, elected for 48 in the most resounding way possible.
This is at AmericaFest, Turning Point USA's largest event, with the CEO in a flashy pantsuit giving a speech endorsing a political candidate. This is strictly forbidden under the law for a 501c3. You cannot endorse political candidates. That is political activity. In my opinion, what Erica Kirk just did was illegal. This is effectively using their tax-exempt donations to create a campaign commercial for J.D. Vance. And before you say, well, maybe it was paid for by one of the other companies that allow political activity. No, no, no. It says Turning Point USA behind her head during the speech. The tickets for the event were sent out from Turning Point USA. The fact page for the event is hosted at tpusa.com. And at the bottom of the webpage, it explicitly says Turning Point USA is a 501c3. It looks to me like the executives at Turning Point are playing pretty fast and loose with the laws concerning 501c3s. Remember why this is important. A 501c3 is tax exempt, which is a tax subsidy. You are paying more in taxes so that they do not have to. So is it fair that Democrats are paying taxes that fund a campaign commercial for J.D. Vance? This is so unjust, which is why there are so many laws against what Erica Kirk just did. If she wants to endorse a candidate, that's fine, but she needs to pay for it out of Turning Point PAC. I'm going to give you the exact wording from IRS Revenue Rule 2007-41. A 501c3 does not participate in or intervene in, including the publishing or distributing of statements, any political campaign on behalf of or in opposition to any candidate for public office. That seems pretty clear that Erica Kirk's statement was illegal. So the only nonprofit that is supposed to do political activity is the 501c4 Turning Point Action. There is a special section on their 990 form where they are supposed to list out the political activity they are engaged in, Schedule C. Now, everyone should go check out Schedule C for Turning Point Action because it is quite shocking. For FY24, on line 2, they listed that they spent $637,500 on political campaign activity expenditures. Now, just let that sink in for a moment. Out of Turning Point Action's $21 million budget, they only spent 3% on political activity. Now, just from what you know about what Turning Point Action does that seem right to you?
Not really.
Now, they actually provide a description of what the $637,500 was spent on. They claim it was specifically political campaign activities include event expense. So they spent this money on some kind of event. I'm guessing it was a campaign rally for Donald Trump. And they are claiming that this is the only thing that Turning Point Action does that qualifies as political activity. All of the rest of the millions of dollars that they have spent was not for political activity. I have a really hard time believing that. We're going to take a closer look. If Turning Point Action spent more than 3% of their budget on political activity, that means they lied to the IRS and they lied to their donors, and that is fraud. This would be an omission of potentially taxable income. So what I want to do is an audit. We're going to do an audit right here, right now, and you people on the internet can help me do it. We're going to look at what Turning Point Action actually does in real life, and then we are going to compare that to what they are reporting in their financials. If it looks like their political activity exceeds 3%,
I need another one. I done ran through my cheese and crackers. I had them Club Minis, and I had some Goba Jet. And then I had them Planters cashews lightly salted. Usually I just get the non-salted, but they didn't have any, so I had to go with the lightly. I done drunk all my water, almost. I need to get me some more snack. I think I'm gonna go get me some graham crackers or something, because child, we finna do a whole audit. Give me a second. I'll be big. Let me go get me a snack, honey, because we finna do an audit. You ain't say nothing about all that, but it did say 46 minutes. So I said, let me get my bowl. Let me some more water. I'm going in there too. I'm gonna get me some graham crackers and peanut butter real quick.